Hello everyone, I'm Chiara Missikoff. I'm a researcher, a facilitator in this social cooperative called Sociolab, a cooperative based in Florence. I work with the participatory process, so basically I involve communities in the innovation of public policies, programs, organization. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my work, social innovation and community engagement. But I'm also talk a little bit about my work as an independent researcher. I studied 2 years ago inclusive learning environments. We're going to see later what is that. And I published a paper with another researcher who is here today, Luca Trigarico, and another researcher as well called Federica Fuchesu. So I'm going to talk about how communities can be involved in the educational field, and what is the impact when communities are involved, and what happens in a city, in a neighborhood, in a street. Okay. So my presentation is going to be a little bit about methodology. So how to involve communities and how to engage them when we want to innovate policies. How to engage them when we want to produce educational services, and what is the impact of this when we see an inclusive learning environment take place in a city. But before starting, I wanted to ask you, what is a community? You know, community is such a buzzword, especially in my field. I'm kind of amazed that in Denmark there are not social enterprises. It's really my daily job. And one of the first things when you want to work with communities is to ask to yourself, who is my community? Okay. I was about to ask you to connect your phone to Menti, but it's not possible today because we have some problems with technology. So I might just ask you randomly, what comes to your mind when you think about a community? Just a word.
Affection.
Sorry?
Affection.
Affection?
Common objective.
Common objective, okay?
Cooperation.
Cooperation?
Network. Means coming together in Irish.
Very nice, coming together. Sorry? Synergies.
Strong bonds.
Strong bonds.
Bonds.
How?
Strong bonds.
Bonds, strong bonds, sorry. Anyone else? People? Yeah, people. Okay, let's start with people. So a community is a group of people coming together because of a space, sometimes, because of bonds, relationships, because of common objectives. Everything you said is good. But the very start, when you want to start a project that involves community, is to define yours, okay? Because sometimes boundaries are not so clear. Also because boundaries are not clear, because new communities are quite different from old ones. New communities are characterized by often a space, so there is a space dimension that is more important than time. So old communities were more historically stratified, the new communities are more a group of people coming together, are based on social practices, are liquid, fluid, so it's hard to define them. So yeah. This is a very good starting point when you want to work with communities. But they are so important in social innovation practices. During the presentation before mine, someone said, okay, so educational services are so important because they can tackle social problems and communities. For me, I want to switch the paradigm. Okay, so communities are so important in defining social services. Why that? Because when you have people gathered together in a place, common interests, social values, high quality of density of relationship, you have social empowerment, and you create a positive loop. And this is the base for defining and structuring social services. I guess that you are all familiar with the concept of social innovation, so I'm going to skip it. So, through community engagement, it is possible for citizens and local stakeholders to be part of the process of defining needs and interests of a community. And this can create new relationship and trust. Community resources become community assets. This is very important. Sometimes we focus on problems, but there are also assets in communities. And the facilitation of, and this also can facilitate the decision-making process or a service delivery of a community. All the pictures that you see are projects that I work with the social enterprise I'm part of. So this is a social housing in Florence. Oh, something, this one. Okay, but anyway. So that leads me to this very framework. It's really important for me to talk about inclusive learning environments. So the educational, what happens when a community is involved in the educational service in an educational environment. This concept is a concept that I studied with the two other researchers that I was mentioning before, and it has together a place dimension, so we're speaking about places, the educational dimension, we talk about educational services, and also the community engagement, because community is really part of the process of defining inclusive learning environments. This is the link to the research that you can read. I guess there is also an edition in English, but anyway. So the idea, when we started studying these inclusive learning environments in different cities, was to gain insight for innovating public policies on this very field. So the aim was to provide insight for a territorial agenda aimed at promoting approaches that can be able to expand the range of educational services in a city. So we conducted desk research, then interviews to stakeholders in different cities that are offering educational services in an innovative way. We're going to see it later. Just to give you an example, actually more than one, what do we think when we speak about inclusive learning environments. I want also to know if there is some kind of similar experience in your town, in your city. This is an inclusive learning environment. This is a community hub located in Capraia Limited, which is a city really close to Florence, of 8,000 citizens, population. These are the young people gathering together in order to regenerate a space and create educational trainings and a study hall. So a place where young people can study all together. So this can be an example of an inclusive learning environment. Do you have something similar that comes into your mind, in your place? Is that something that you can relate to? Okay. Let's see. This is another one. This is an intercultural center called Anelli Mancanti. It's an association based in Florence. And migrants and local communities are delivering together educational services to other migrants. Okay, so they're, for example, teaching Italians, they're helping new migrants to get to know the city, to know where to go when they're looking for local services. So they work both as an educational services and also as an orientation point for people in town. So let's go to the definition. So we saw two examples. An inclusive learning environment is a place. Okay, there is a place dimension very strong and it's important, that offer educational services. It is usually managed by a social economic organization, and its offer is addressed to the population where the place is located. That can be a street, a neighborhood, a city, and an area. But the place dimension is very important. Why we say learning environment? The idea is that these places can support the ability of individuals to have an impact of their own social territory. Okay? People and local stakeholders are involved in the process, so they can act consciously and directly in relation to the social territorial context in which they live. It's inclusive because special methodology is used to design that, and it's a cooperation one. So people can co-create the services that they're going to use. And these methodologies involve public actors, citizens, private sector, public administration, all together to deliver new services. How to create one? So we said before, first step, define your community. This is a very basic one, okay? So frame the context, engage citizens and local stakeholders, practice active listening, okay? So you can identify local needs, discover community assets, identify where social relations are more strong, where are more weak. Then develop the service. It could be an highly accessible experimental services that would be very good. This service can have a hybrid use of spaces. That's also very good, so you can have more activities in the same spot. And a collaborative governance. So it's not me delivering, but we're all together that we're managing what the services. Testing and feedback, this is very important. The needs are gonna change through time. They're not gonna be stable. That's how society works. So after delivering the service, it's so important to monitor. It's super important to monitor, to evaluate the service, to readdressing activities according to new needs and feedback, and then measure your impact. That's also very important. Impact can go through different sectors. That can be employment, can be education, can be social exclusion. Try to measure them because that give you more assets and more feedback on how to enhance your service. So I wanted also to show you some tools that can be useful for designing an educational service. We see the first, this is a model called Double Diamond. It is used in service design. I don't know if you're familiar with this. I do not service design actually. The first community should be engaged in the definition of the problem and in the discovering of what is there, you know. Then the problem must be defined. We cannot go through all the needs that are emerging. We have to choose some and prioritize. Develop the service, deliver it, and then testing, feedback, and go again. And it's a circle. And the community must be involved in the process, even in the feedback part. All these introduction to finally arrive to inclusive learning environments. So we saw why it is so important to involve local citizens and stakeholders. We had a look on methodology, so how to create this kind of space. Now I want to present you the case of Focus, which is a foundation located in Naples. It is an urban regeneration project that took place in 2013, and it's a foundation that delivers mainly educational services. And it is a good case to present because it is working since 10 years now, and so we can actually measure the impact of the work of this foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with Quartieri Spagnoli. Have you ever been to Naples? No? No? See? Okay. So this is the city, and in the very city center, there is this neighborhood called Quartieri Spagnoli, Spanish quarters, because it was built during the Spanish occupation in the 16th century. It looks like a little bit like on the picture on the right, so it's very narrow, a lot of houses all together, and it's a problematic neighborhood. The quarters have a long record of poverty and marginality. Still today there is a high rate of youth unemployment and school dropout, and the lowest availability of public living areas per inhabitants, as you can see. There is not a park, definitely. So in this area, there is this building, a former monastery, that a foundation in Italy called Dalla Parte dei Bambini decided to buy and to renovate. And to do that, they asked the local population to help them to build it. So right now, we have this very huge building inside the quarters that is the headquarters of many organizations and many services, as we're gonna see. So we've seen together a bit of methodology. I wanted to give you a bit of the history of how this place was built and generated, so you can have an idea of how an inclusive learning environment can be built. So in 2013, as I told you, urban regeneration of the building took place, and the foundation started setting up public-private partnership in order to find pilot project of business incubation. Later on, in the first years of activity, the foundation decided to focus on unemployment and school dropout, because those were the needs of the neighborhood. So they decided to focus their activities on this, and so started delivering educational services. Then the foundation became a business incubator as well. So they asked to local organizations if they want to come to the building and have their headquarters there. So first two were a kindergarten and a school of informal trainings. Then, after targeting children and youth employment, they decided also to go for the families. So there was another need there, and in this case, specific case, were the young mothers of the children who were going to school inside the building. These were unemployed mothers looking for a second opportunity, so the foundation decided to deliver a training, a social worker training. These mothers applied to the training, did the training, and after that they were hired by the same foundation in the same building to work there as social workers. It's a very nice story. And this is how the focus looks today. Okay, so it's full of things going on in the same building. We can see there is a secondary school, an online newspaper, an informal education training for youth and adults, the Academy of Fine Arts. The director, Renato Guaglia, asked to the Academy of Fine Arts of Naples to have a part of their lecture inside the building. Why? Because one of the main goals of the foundation was to break the social isolation of the quarters. And this happens not when you bring your community outside the city, outside in the city, but when you bring the city inside your quarters. And so that's why we did this, and now like 500 people every day are crossing the invisible line that divides Spanish quarters to the rest of the city. It's very, very nice. A primary school, a gym, a dance school, the Cervantes Institute for studying language, Spanish language, a co-working space, cafe, restaurants, a lot of projects that are working with people with disabilities. 5 minutes, yes, I'm almost done. Kindergarten daycare. So today, comparing to 10 years ago, there are 7 educational services, more 500% of students coming every day, 40% more, plus 40% of economic activities, plus 6 community spaces. Why we decided to study focus as a researcher? Because we think that it represents a new model of community welfare. Inside you can find civic entrepreneurship, schools and training, social inclusion projects, musical and cultural activities, public-private collaboration through which most of the activities are funded, sports and leisure facility. It was really interesting for us to see a school at the very center of a urban regeneration process. I don't know if it's the same in your countries, but like in Italy, we talk a lot about the urban regeneration process. To see a school at the center of this kind of activities was really interesting to study. And we saw how it worked to contrast marginalities and support the emancipation of territories. So why I'm telling all of this to you? Because we would like to keep studying, this kind of activities. There are more mapped in our paper, and we would like to keep studying because we saw that these places can provide insights for a new public policy. A public policy that is based on the capacitation of local communities and territorial development. This experiment shows that citizens' participation is really important in the process of defining needs and defining assets and local resources. Places, especially community hub, hybrid spaces, can generate creative solutions for tackling problems. I don't like the way the word solution. I don't know why I put it there. I don't think that this can be a solution for every social problem. Okay, this must be clear. I want to say it because it looks differently in this presentation. But of course, it is not a solution. It's a starting point to address the social problems using a local perspective, using a bottom-up approach. Then we're not going to end poverty with inclusive learning environment, but for sure we can do a little bit. And also, this little bit can be done by sharing responsibility and vision among local actors. So not alone, but civil society, private companies, public administration, active citizenship, everybody together to the promotion of social change. That was it. I hope you want to say